Hi everyone, my name is Joseph and welcome to the discussion for Digimon Liberator, the comic, episode 5, part 2. Before I continue really quickly, while I am feeling better compared to last week, hopefully this is not TMI, but my sinus system is still congested. So if I'm sounding like breathing through my mouth essentially, it's because I am. I can't really breathe through my nose because of the congestion. And also I might be drinking a bit more water than I typically do, or just clearing my throat more often than I do just because again of the congestion issue. Hopefully that makes sense, and I thank everyone for their patience. So it's going to discuss episode 2. So this part actually I feel like had a lot of great world building information, more specifically world building information for the Digimon aspect. So before I continue, I do have to say I am a little bit disappointed. So in the last episode I explained that I was looking forward to how it will be revealed how the wild Digimon interact with the card Digimon. I was under the impression that the card Digimon were separate from the wild Digimon, that they were essentially holograms or just copies of the wild Digimon. It gets revealed with this part though that essentially the wild Digimon get converted into those cards, and the reason why they're being converted is because apparently Lacunia, it gets revealed that in typical Digimon fashion, of course, the digital world was created through the essentially humans inventing the website, no, not the website, I'm sorry, the internet. And because of the internet, slowly the digital world started becoming developed. I did like the explanation about that. I'm always usually a big fan of the explanation about the digital world, how that came into creation in most Digimon iterations. I also like the specified that the satellites maps that was posted on the internet, that's essentially where the landscaping came from for Lacunia. So I think that Odita was cool as well. But essentially, despite this world belonging to the wild Digimon, apparently this world is also detrimental to the wild Digimon. They can't just live their lives because apparently they become deleted. Or it seems like they become deleted. Something's occurring to them where their data disappears. That detail I did find interesting at the end, but also I hope that they go back and explain that because I do find that a little bit odd, where one's home, essentially one's planet, continent, nation, whatever, is actually quite negative for the people living there. The only other example I could think of something like this is from Brandon Sanderson's novel series. I don't read it personally myself, but I'm aware of it. I think it's the Oathbreaker, I believe, where essentially the setting of this novel takes place in a continent where the winds are so strong that the environment needed to adapt and evolve to the winds. In fact, when the winds get stronger, a lot of grass actually lays down flat in trees as well. So, but despite that, the people who live within this world, they're still able to, well, live within it, right? So I do find that a little bit confusing how this world was created for wild Digimon, but it's dangerous for wild Digimon. Maybe I misunderstood an aspect. If anyone has an answer for that, please do. Feel free to explain that to me. I would very much appreciate that. But despite that, so again, the only reason why I'm a bit disappointed is just because I was hoping that the wild Digimon would be separate from the card Digimon. But again, it's revealed that the card Digimon are essentially one of the same with the wild Digimon. They're put into the card form to protect them. What makes Taramon and Shumon so special is that they're one of a handful of Digimon who are able to survive in Lacunia in the digital world without being erased, without being deleted. We'll hopefully find out more about that as we continue with the story. The story, one recalls 2 videos ago, give or take, when Ryu begins his assignment in the other novel portion. In the first part, it's explained that Tyrannomon explains to Ryo, we need to keep the fight away from that direction. Excuse me, that's a hiccup. Away from that direction because essentially the Grandmasters were training a new debug team, I believe. I made a comment saying, well, I believe that's probably Shoto and Arisa. But in the next part, it gets revealed that when Shoto and Arisa go meet with the GM, he doesn't ask them to join the debugging team. So I thought I was incorrect about that. But in this part, in this episode, part 2, it gets revealed that the Kuboy, the GM, Kuboy, and I believe her name is Yu, excuse me, because it's new characters introduced. I do have the character sheet right here. Her name is Yu King Queen. I can't pronounce that. Excuse me, King Lan. They now officially have reached out to both Shoto and Arisa and asked both of them if they want to be part of the debug team officially. I actually really like that small detail, and I thought that was quite neat. After they get introduced to be part of the debug team, that's when Owen Dreadnought, one may not recall him, he's from the episode 0, even before Liberator came out, he was having a duel with another individual. I can't remember the details specifically, but from what I do recall, again, Arisa started playing Laconia because one of her favorite card players was playing Laconia. And Oshoto was actually quite hesitant because his favorite card player did not use Laconia or Liberator, the game Liberator, for a long time. I believe it was Owen Dreadnought that he was a big fan of. So I just wanted to quickly bring that up because essentially Owen appears at the end. He's a bit of a jerk. He's not happy with these two individuals, Oshoto and Arisa, joining the debug team, and he believes that they're just going to drag them down. So the part ends with an introduction to a battle. So episode 6 will more than likely begin with that battle between Shoto and Owen Dreadnought. I do have to say, although I did like the information presented in this episode, I think this was probably my least favorite episode, just because I do like all the characters being introduced, but I just didn't appreciate the overexcitement or the overenthusiasm, that Yao displayed towards Shumon and Terramon. Maybe because I'm getting older, but I'm just not a fan of like the overenthusiastic character who jumps around and stuff like that, right? Puck from Berserk sometimes takes it too much to a bit of extreme, but I'm fine with that at the end of the day. But yeah, so hopefully, I'm hoping that Yao's characterization is reined back a little bit. I did notice that the way they draw her mouth, the animators, or not the animators, the drawers, it's more like a cat mouth than like a human mouth. That little, everyone puts like emojis on your phone, not emojis, but smiley faces on one's phone. Instead of putting the colon and the parentheses, rather it looks more like a colon and the letter 3. or letter 3 on the letter 3. If one uses that smiley face, you know what I'm referring to. But again, despite that, I'm still liking all the characters, although I was a bit irritated by that behavior. It did not make me dislike Yao's character, which is that small segment. With that being said, I did like the reaction from Terramon, Shumon, Arisa, and Shoto, how they were like, oh my gosh, she's very enthusiastic. And Cool Boy just like, let her have her moment. So, although I didn't like I didn't like Yao's reaction, I liked the way that everyone else reacted to Yao's behavior. And actually, I feel like Cool Boy's remark says a lot about him as well. He's very much a patient individual, and he's not impatient. He's not a jerk about the things that about the way that he operates. So, again, a small detail, but I think that says a lot about Cool Boy. And so, excuse me. Oh no, again, I did like this episode. I felt like it introduced a lot of, specifically, maybe not world building is not the correct name, but more like character building. Well, I guess it is world building, right? Because it's talking about Laconia, but it was very specific to Digimon. And I'm looking forward to what this means for the world of Laconia. And again, I hope you get more detail about why Laconia is so dangerous for Digimon. Is it because of human interaction? Another cool thing that I liked about this as well is how the D-Doc was discussed, essentially like our world, or our Digimon iterations, or more specifically, Digimon Tamers, and the way that Digimon exists in the real world as a card game and a TV show. It also exists in this world and like in Seekers as well, as it gets explicitly stated as a video game, anime, a card game, and merchandise as well. And they even show that the curation of the D-Doc has explained that the another company stepped in with IDEA, and they're the ones who together they collaborated and created that first D-Doc. And the D-Doc actually looks a lot like the one from Seekers as well. I'm not too well versed in the Digimon VPET history, but to my understanding, when I saw it first appear in Seekers, a lot of people were saying that or maybe it wasn't created in real life, but it's still cool how the writers are using the VPET as a kind of item within the world. Hopefully they'll come back to it. With that being said, I think it would have been cool. So I understand why Liberator is not part of the Seekers world, but to be honest, I think it would have been interesting had Liberator just maybe not continued the story of Seekers, kind of like an anthology. What Stranger Things was originally supposed to be. The first season was meant to be a separate season from all the other seasons, and they were supposed to have new characters, new storylines, dealing with the Upside Down and the Mind Flayer and everything like that. Obviously, Stranger Things didn't do that, but I think Liberator would have benefited from doing something like this as well, where the audience would have already been introduced to code crackers, to the Digi Police and everything like that. And E.G. Leon, they don't have to make an appearance again. Maybe they could just be on the background or something like that in one of the panels, but they don't have to be at the forefront of the story. I just think it would have been cool just to continue having a iteration of Digimon where the world feels a bit more alive. Again, I do like the anime, but all the animes are almost always separate and independent of the previous iteration. Ghost Game has nothing to do with Savers. Savers has nothing to do with Frontier. And the only Digimon properties that continue with one another would be Adventure 1 and Adventure 2. So I do think that was a missed opportunity. This world, although it may not be cyberpunk in the way that the Seekers was trying to emulate, I think they could have easily corrected that, right? It could have just been a time skip or something like that where it's explained. Since the internet has been so widely used, that the human world and the digital world is now adapted to that, and then there's multiple locations that one can go to. But yeah, so that's just my opinion. I'd like to know your thoughts about that. Are you against that idea? If you are against that idea, I'd love to have an explanation. If you are for the idea, I'd love to hear your point of view as well. But yeah, so that's my thoughts for this episode, part 2. I'm looking forward to episode 6. And yeah, thank you so much for listening, everyone. If it seems like I was a little bit not as structured as I typically am, again, I am recovering from my cold. And again, I thank you for your patience. Hopefully I was not sniffling sniffling too much, and there was no need to use my tissue paper, so I'm happy about that. Have a prodigious day, everyone. My question for everyone, again, to reiterate, is how do you feel about Digimon Liberator being separate from Digimon Seekers? Do you think maybe Liberator would have benefited from being in that same world? Again, don't continue the story of Leon, E.G., Professor Rusenji. Just continue inhabiting that world. Thank you so much again for listening. I really do appreciate it. Have a great day, everyone. Have a prodigious day, and take care. Hi everyone, I haven't done this in a while where I add a extra element to the video after it's finished. So hopefully it's not too jarring. But I came up with a really great example that I wanted to discussing when I stated how I do wish that Liberator took place in the world of Seekers. Again, not continuing the story of E.G. and Leon, just continuing the story within the setting of Seekers. A really good example of a property that does this really well would be Dragon Age. If anyone's unaware about Dragon Age, there's 3 games that are currently out: Dragon Age Origins, Dragon Age 2, and then Dragon Age Inquisition. And of course, the 4th game is going to be releasing soon, in October 31st, Dragon Age the Velguard. So, each of these games always come with a different set of a new main character and a different set of party members as well. The only party member that's been consistent as a actual member of the team has been Varric. He's been in Dragon Age 2 and Dragon Age Inquisition. We'll see if he'll be present as a party member, a permanent one, in the Velguard. Other characters who have appeared in the games in the past, they do make appearances again, but they may not be part of the party proper. A really good example of this would be Liliana. She appeared in Dragon Age Origins, and she also appears in Inquisition, but she's not a party member that you could take into the field. She's just part of the what's the game's term for it? The war console, the console. Another example about this would be Colin. He was present in the first Dragon Age Origins. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think he was present in Dragon Age 2. And then he makes his appearance again in Dragon Age Inquisition. Again, like Liliana, working on the war console. So I think that's a really good example of what I meant when I said at the beginning of the video. I think I would have preferred. I am enjoying Liberator, but I think the Liberator would have benefited just from having its story to continue to take place within the setting, within the world of Seekers. And yeah, so hopefully that example makes sense. Thank you everyone for your patience and me adding this additional part. Maybe it was just an excuse for me to talk about Dragon Age. No, I'm just joking. Again, I really regret it not mentioning this in the video proper. Once I ended it, about a minute or so after that, Dragon Age just popped into my head. I was just thinking to myself, oh, that's a great example of what I was discussing. It's too bad I didn't discuss that, and so I made the choice to go ahead and do this. So as always, let me reiterate my question since this is the new end of the video. My question for everyone is, do you agree with what I said about having the world of Liberator continue in Seekers, or are you happy that Liberator is in its own independent, isolated world? Have a prodigious day, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I appreciate your patience as well. Take care, everyone.